9, 8.
You're watching The
7,
Experience, Comic Culture
6,
and Sales.
5,
Streaming live daily
4,
to Facebook, YouTube,
3,
Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
So a guy's at work, but he's thinking about his wife. And he's thinking about his wife because she's just had some medical stuff going on. And the doctor said, no matter what happens, you got to keep your wife from getting upset. She needs time to recover. So she's staying home and is supposed to do just some quiet things, drink tea, do puzzles, those kind of things. But he's worried about her. So when he gets a call from her, he immediately takes it. And she sounds upset. And he's like, well, honey, what's wrong? She says, well, I'm doing what the doctor said. I'm here and I'm trying to build a puzzle. He goes, what do you mean? She says, I got this puzzle down and I spread out all the pieces and it looked like a nice puzzle. So I started moving the pieces around and I've been at this for 2 hours and I haven't been able to put any pieces together. And he goes, you mean just not much? No, none, no pieces. It's like, well, what's the puzzle of? She said, it's a rooster. And it looked really colorful. And but I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Why can't I get any of these pieces together? He goes, honey, look, I'm going to come home on lunch. I got lunch in 15 minutes. I'm going to come home. I'll take a look at the puzzle. We'll figure it out. Okay. Just calm down. So he gets off the phone and he just leaves. He's like, tells him, I got to take lunch early today. And he gets in the car and he drives home. And he walks in and the wife is there and she is just frustrated. She is like beside herself looking at these pieces, trying to figure out how they go together. And he walks up and he looks and he picks up the box. And he looks at the box for a minute. He looks back down at the pieces and he puts a reassuring hand on his wife's shoulder and says, have you had a cup of tea yet? Because, the doctor says you should just drink some tea, some herbal tea. She says, no, not yet. He goes, okay, I want you to go in the kitchen and I want you to make yourself a cup of tea. And while you're doing that, I'm going to put the cornflakes back in the box. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 1st. Can you believe it's November already? We're in the Christmas. It's like right up the corner there. Thanksgiving's in the middle going, hey, don't forget about me. But this year is flying by. We got a big lineup today on the Experience. Wednesday is our big day. And of course, we have comic collectibles. Then we have Talk and Treat Trivia with the guest is Joseph Deux. I didn't get what the last name is, but after that, 360 Comics is having a 20% off everything sale. And then we'll wrap up the evening with Honorary. So it's going to be a big day today. So you want to stick around for all that. Let's see. Hello to Triple B. Hello, Ed. Yeah, I like the cornflakes one. I thought about doing frosted flakes, but I think cornflakes works better. So I said there was a tiger on the box. It might make it more obvious. All right. We're going to do something interesting today. Now, for Halloween, I watched the latest Kenneth Branagh, Agatha Christie movie, A Haunting in Venice. So we're going to talk about that. But first, instead of doing a lot of news, we're going to focus on one news story. We're going to focus on the one news story because it's a big story. Variety has put out an article today, and that article has launched chaos across the interwebs because it's a Marvel article. And it talks about, is Marvel in trouble? So what I did was I broke it down. I'm summarizing it, covering all the points, and then I'll talk to you about how I see it. But I am going to summarize the article for you so you don't have to run over and read it. I don't necessarily think it's all that great of an article, but there's a lot of stuff in it. So we're going to break that down. All right. So let's jump into that, and then we'll do a break, and then we'll talk about A Haunting in Venice. So Variety has released this new article this morning, and it has everyone talking about Marvel. And the title of the article is Crisis at Marvel. Jonathan Majors' backup plan, the Marvel's reshoots, reviving original Avengers, and more issues revealed. Now, that's a pretty ominous sounding headline. So you know that everyone and their brother is making videos about this, and you can go on YouTube and you're going to see it broken down by each individual thing. This is going to do horrible. They're thinking about bringing back all the Avengers. So I'm going to boil it all down for you so you don't have to. Now, in the very opening of this article, they say that Marvel Studios is had their annual creative meeting in September. They do that regularly. Kevin Feige, they rent a house, they go lock themselves in for a weekend down in Palm Springs, and they work through what's going to happen over the next year or so. You know, they figure out a phase or whatever. And they do this regularly when needed. Well, they did this, and Kevin Feige was there, of course. And the article talks about how normally they go in confidently, knowing that they're planning out the next big batch of movies. But this year they've gone in angst-ridden because of a series of disappointing on-screen results, potential legal issues for one of their stars, and questions about their strategy to expand the universe out of just films. Well, the top issue, of course, is Jonathan Majors, who Marvel has been banking on to carry the bulk of the next phase of movies. Now, Majors still insists he's innocent, but the motion to dismiss his trial was denied, and later this month, it's going to start. And regardless of the outcome, his reputation has taken a huge hit. Now, that means that Marvel needs to kind of reevaluate their upcoming slate of sequels, the spin-offs, and everything else that's kind of slated around the character of Kang the Conqueror. Now, Majors has already appeared in season 1 of Loki, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and now he's a big part of Loki season 2. And what we're hearing is that the end of Loki season 2 really solidifies him as Kang, as the bad guy for the rest of phase 5 and 6. And part of the problem is that when all this came, does anyone else picture Lee Majors when you hear Jonathan Majors? No. Part of the problem is that when all of this happened, Marvel could have reacted at the time and started downplaying Kang or making some changes. The problem is that when all of this news came out, we went right into a writer's strike and then an actor's strike. So the chance of rewriting the stories for Loki and stuff went out the window. And then with the actor's strike, the chance of reshooting some scenes went out the window. So, yeah, so they're kind of moving forward with what they've got. Now, some of the things that they're talking about, as, you know, I mean, he's in the name of one of the upcoming Avengers movies, the Kang Dynasty. So while they have discussed some backup plans, one of them includes maybe pivoting to another big bad Marvel character. They've even mentioned Doctor Doom. But any change at this point would be extremely problematic because of all that they've set up already. And, so that makes it really difficult. Now, there's also the option of possibly recasting the role or making tweaks to switch it. But we've already had the big scene of the Council of Kangs, and they were all Jonathan Majors. So Marvel's kind of in a tight spot here. Now, so that's the first part of the article. They talk about that. And they give a little more details about some of the stuff that's happened on the Majors trial and on Jonathan Majors trial. And we've talked about that. We know, the news coming out of London, or them trying to get information out of London, and how he was in London filming Quantumania when this event, or Loki when this happened. So there's a lot going on there. So that is definitely something they have to concern themselves. But then the article shifts gears to talk about the Marvels, saying that it was plagued with lengthy reshoots and is likely to be underwhelming at the box office. Mind you, this is still a company that has earned $30 billion over 32 films. Just think about that for a minute. $30 billion over 32 films. That's almost $1 billion per film. And that's counting ones that don't do as well. Now, the company is dealing with a directive. It's also dealing with a directive that came out in 2020. Remember that Bob Iger stepped down and Bob Chapek came up. And Bob Chapek had most of his bonuses and stuff were tied to the success of Disney Plus. So there was a mandate that came down that said that they wanted something either in theaters or streaming on Disney Plus at all times. Well, that, of course, created a lot of things. It created a glut of projects. So, the teams that would normally put these out get diluted. The quality starts to diminish. Where it used to be this clear-cut narrative through most of the Infinity Saga, the Multiverse Saga has been really kind of muddled, and people aren't sure exactly what's going on. They're not sure what shows they need to watch, what they don't need to watch. So it's been kind of a mess. So that brings us back to the Marvels. And that is currently tracking at between $75 and $80 million opening, which for most companies would be a success, but for Marvel, that's considered low. Multiverse of Madness opened for $185 million. They also did 4 weeks of reshoots and they're said to have to try to bring some coherence to a tangled storyline. Now, that part's interesting to me because Marvel, if you've ever read the history of Marvel, the actual authorized book, Marvel, as part of their process, is a little different than most studios. They've built in reshoots as part of the process, and they tend to find the film in post-production. So they film a bunch of stuff, they look at it in post-production. When it doesn't quite work or where they need to, then they bring everybody back and they do reshoots. It's kind of expensive, but what it allows them to do is really hone the film to a fine point to get it what it needs. Well, that has worked well through the first 3 phases, but with stuff like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, that went from having a July release up to a February release because Captain Marvel was supposed to release in February, the Marvels, and it wasn't going to be ready because of these reshoots. So suddenly the VFX departments that were trying to finish the stuff and coming up with all these changes that were being made in post-production and reshoots had to scramble. So when the premiere happened, there were literally special effects shots that were out of focus because they weren't done. And that's been the big knock on Quantumania, was a lot of the special effects looked bad because they were rushed. And the Marvels went from February to July and now to November. And, another thing that Marvel did was they did a test screening, and they don't do test screenings. They put out the movie they want to put out. They don't do test screenings, but they did one, and it got very middling reviews, So now I don't think we're going to end up seeing exactly what we saw when it comes to, the test screening, because again, 4 weeks worth of reviews. But something of note is that Nia DaCosta directed the Marvels, but she moved on to start working on her next film while the Marvels was still in post-production. Now, that's probably because it got bumped so much. Post-production is happening much later than expected. But it's rare that a director leaves a movie before it's done, which means that it's Kevin Feige and crew finishing this movie without the director. So that's not exactly a good sign. Now, one of the big things is the overworking of the visual effects teams led them to unionize this year. And it's also believed that the visual effects issues were part of the reason that Victoria Alonso was fired. Now, this is kind of controversial one way or another, because the article states that some people believe that while shows like WandaVision and She-Hulk actually had some visual effects that were done after the episodes debuted. So you'd watch them on, when they premiered on a Wednesday, and then if you watch them the following week, they've inserted the finished special effects because that's when they got them done by. Good reason to rewatch Marvel stuff, because they might get better after on a second viewing, literally. But so that was happening. And at the same time, Alonso had this pet project she had done, this indie art house type film that she was promoting and was told not to really go out there and promote. She wasn't supposed to do this film anyway. And she was out promoting it, and she was in charge of the visual effects stuff. So some people say that's part of why she got fired. But switch it around, there's other people who counter that and say that it's all the last minute tinkering and drastic changes that are made, forcing the VFX teams to rush to accommodate. One of the examples given is that in the original She-Hulk run, the origin story part of it was originally going to take place in episode 8, and Feige and the higher-ups decided that needed to happen in episode 2, which caused an entire schedule shift and caused the VFX team to have to speed up, and they didn't make the deadline. And again, that's one of the ones that got fixed after it debuted. So what is happening here is that Marvel Studios, its branding is taking a big hit because of this. Because it used to be that Marvel Studios on something, people assumed it was going to be high quality. And now, not so much. And also the ancillary things involving Marvel are taking a hit as well. Marvel-related podcasts, articles, video coverage, like all the, Easter egg videos and breakdowns and stuff like that, all of them have seen a significant dip in their numbers, which, and it goes with the fact that there are also a lot more negative tones with these things as well. So some people aren't as excited about Marvel as they used to be because the movies haven't been as good. And the movies haven't been as good. So the people reviewing them and doing the Easter egg videos and stuff are pointing those things out and taking a more negative tone So if you are a fan of Marvel, but you're kind of losing interest because the films aren't as good, and then you go out to these to watch the Easter egg videos and stuff, and they're all being negative, you're not going to watch them. So all of this is stuff that they're saying that puts Marvel in a bad place. But there's other stuff going on too. This isn't unnoticed by Folie. It's said that he's pulling the plug on scripts and projects that aren't working. An example of that is Blade. They already had Mahershala Ali attached, but the project has gone through 5 writers, 2 directors, and it got shut down 6 weeks prior to production starting because of the strikes. One of the scripts is said to have morphed into something almost unrecognizable as a Blade movie. Supposedly it had multiple female lead characters, and it was all filled with life lessons, and it relegated Blade to the 4th lead in his own movie. Now, it was also said that Ali was close to leaving the project, but Folie got him to stay, and it brought in Oscar-nominated writer Logan Michael Green to start the project fresh. So that's why it's getting delayed. And where it was originally going to come out in 2023, it's now going to come out probably in 2025, and they're looking to make it for under $100 million. So Leonard said, I was always bummed how they considered Toby the first Spider-Man. Was Nicholas Hammond chopped liver? Hammond, Reb Brown, Eric Allen, Kramer should all have had Marvel cameos. I think what it is that they Kevin Feige looks at it from the era that he started in. He started working on Spider-Man in the era. He started working on the X-Men films and Spider-Man films before Marvel ever happened. So that's why he considers them all, in the 2000s type stuff. But I agree with you. I would like to have seen those things too. But Reb Brown had a cameo. Yeah, JD's pointed that out. In the scene where Captain America is supposed to get the medal and the guy comes out and doesn't, stands there in a general's armed uniform and says, I thought he'd be taller. Well, the guy sitting next to him is Reb Brown. So he did have a cameo. Okay, let's go on. With Bob Iger's return and the statement that he felt that the downside of the expansion of Marvel Television actually diluted the focus and the attention on the film, the studio is said to be considering some drastic moves now. One of the things being discussed, and I don't know how true this is, but again, this is all from the same article, is bringing back the original Avengers, including Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson, both of whose characters died in Avengers Endgame. Now, with the fact that we're in the current saga, the multiverse saga, you could easily do that story-wise, but that's not going to be cheap. I mean, Downey for Iron Man 3 made $25 million. So if you want to bring back Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo would come back anyway, and Chris Hemsworth, and you don't even know what state Jeremy Renner is in. Is he going to come back and do action movies? I mean, the only thing I hear he's got lined up right now is doing voiceover work. So, I mean, eventually he's probably going to come back, but is he going to come back to action movies? Now, not all of this has been bad for Marvel of late. Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3, took in $845 million worldwide. But it's at a point where the company has had so much success that anything under $500 million is considered disappointment. I mean, we talk about Quantumania like it was a bust. The thing made $476 million. How much would Warner Brothers love to have made $476 million off of The Flash or Shazam 2 or any of their movies? So, Marvel still does make money. And there's some speculation that the key to reviving Marvel could come from the Fox deal, which means that they have X-Men, Fantastic Four, Wolverine, and Deadpool back in the toy box. And fans seem really hyped for Deadpool 3, which brings Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman back together. But it should be kind of cautious optimism. Because if you think about the last few X-Men films bombed. And I don't really think any of the Fantastic Four's films did really well. They were all disappointments in one way or another, especially the last one. So there's nothing to say that the viewing audience is going to suddenly run in happily to see yet another Fantastic Four take or another X-Men take when they've been doing so bad. How is Renner doing? Haven't heard anything from him in a while. Do you know how he is progressing? He is progressing very well, from what I understand. He's recording music again. He's put an album together that he wrote while recovering. He gets around. He moves around pretty well. He is going to return for mayor of Kingstown. So he is going to get back to acting. So I think he's doing well. I just don't know if he's going to end up back into action movies. But I think he will be back to acting and everything else soon. All right. Now, it's kind of funny. A lot of people online are calling this the death knell of Marvel, that they're dying and all that. But there's a guy named Jason Squire. He teaches at USC, and he's the host of the Movie Business Podcast. And he refers to Kevin Feige as the Babe Ruth of movie executives, and says that it would be ill-advised to start writing Marvel's obituary, as the company still has the most profitable track record in movie history. So while we're looking at this stuff, the only reason we're looking at Marvel as being in trouble is because they set their own bar so high. So can they turn it around? I think they absolutely could. But I also think that putting out articles like why Marvel's dying and all this other stuff could end up being part of what brings them back. Because society loves an underdog as they're rising, and that's what Marvel was. And then when you get near the top, we love to see you fall. But once you fall and hit bottom, we love to see you rise up again. Keanu Reeves is an example of that. John Travolta. Stuff like that. So we'll have to see how it all works out. And we'll have to see what the take is really on the Marvels. Because I know they've edited the hell out of it as a short movie. But a lot of what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of stuff in there that is going to be important to the stuff going forward, like incursions and cameos and stuff. They're doing some interesting ads that bring in lines from Thanos that we've never heard on screen. Hints that maybe the X-Men are coming. Rumors that we're going to get an X-Men at the end of the movie. So this could be one of those that not a lot of people go see that first weekend, and then suddenly everybody comes out going, oh my God, this happened. And then suddenly people are running to the theater. So yeah, I use that the Dark Knight quote a lot. You die a hero, you live long enough to become the villain. Two-Face's line, or Harvey Dent's line. All right, let's take our break. And when we come back, we're going to completely shift gears and talk about A Haunting in Venice. So we'll be right back.
Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out. Twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code. What if Hans Gruber from Die Hard had to battle the Joker from Batman the Animated Series in a dance battle? Or who would win in a race between Baby from Baby Driver and Snidely Whiplash? If Austin Powers and Shrek found themselves in a hot dog eating contest, who would emerge victorious? These are the questions we talk about on Nerd Killer Warfare. Debate the most absurd questions you've ever heard in popular culture. Register now by scanning the QR code or visiting bit.ly/EXP casting.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Yeah, Green Goblin did say something like that, but Green Goblin also said, I'm something of a scientist myself. And that's the one we remember him for. That don't tell Harry. All right, so let's get into last night's movie. Now, I was very happy to have something to watch on Halloween night, A Haunting in Venice. I even wrote it down that it was going to be on Hulu on October 31st when I heard about it. So, and I had it stuck here so that I could remember to watch it. Love Agatha Christie movies. Love Agatha Christie stories. I read them all. I've watched all the David Suchet adaptations. I watched the horrible John Malkovich adaptation of the ABC Murders on Amazon Prime. Do yourself a favor, never watch it. That said, Kenneth Branagh as Hercule Poirot, beautiful. Just beautiful. Absolutely loved Murder on the Orient Express. Was looking forward to Death on the Nile, even though it got postponed. Really enjoyed that movie as well. Was surprised after it didn't do as well in the box office, but then they really had a hard time promoting it. It was right as COVID ended. A lot of stuff was going against it. I was a little surprised when it was announced that they were going to do another one. Happily surprised. Same writer, same director, lead actor, but none of the other cast is brought back. Where they brought the character of Book from the first one to the second one, he's dead. Sorry to spoil that for you. He dies in Death on the Nile. But he wasn't supposed to be in Death on the Nile anyway, so. But A Haunting in Venice is unique compared to the other two movies. First, because there is no Agatha Christie story called A Haunting in Venice. It is actually based on a story called The Halloween Party. And The Halloween Party is not one of the more popular ones. You know, there's other stories they could have done. The case of Roger Ackroyd, the ABC murders, Evil Under the Sun. there were a lot of them they could have done, and there were more of the travel log type ones. But you could see that they wanted to go with a cheaper budget. And this is definitely a cheaper budget. This movie takes place in Venice, but while we see a little bit shooting on the streets, the majority of this movie takes place in a single location. And it works. It absolutely works for it, because unlike the other two movies, this has a supernatural / horror bent to it, which is kind of a weird thing to put on it, because I don't know what audience they're going for. Are they going for like a Blumhouse thing? Because usually it's older people who want to go see murder mysteries. So it does strike me as kind of weird that they would combine the two elements. But that said, I was looking forward to it. I didn't get a chance. It opened up early in October and is already on Hulu. So if you have Hulu, you could watch it. But the Halloween Party, the second difference is Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile are pretty faithful adaptations of the books. Not 100%. There are distinct differences. Like I said, the character of Book, who is a minor character in the first one, isn't really as involved in the murder mystery. The character of the doctor and Abernathy got pushed together to make the Leslie Odom's character. The character of Pilar is not in. They swapped her completely. So they did some things to change it up. And same with Death on the Nile. A Halloween Party is about as similar to A Haunting in Venice as Civil War, the comic book, is to the Civil War, the movie, to Captain America Civil War. There's some names that are the same. There's a few incidences that are the same. I mean, there is a Halloween party that involves orphans. There is bobbing for apples. Hercule Poirot is in it, as is another recurring character, Iridine Oliver, who is a friend of Poirot's, who gets him into this. But the difference is the Halloween party is Miss Oliver goes to a Halloween party that she's invited to, and this event happens while bobbing for apples that this little girl believes she saw a murder. She ends up getting Poirot to come in. The whole story takes off from there. We find out there was a previous murder. Okay, that's Halloween Party. This is a woman buys a house that used to be used as an orphanage, but the children, something happened, I don't remember what it was. The children get locked in and end up starving to death and dying. And supposedly now the palazzo is haunted, and anybody who is a doctor or a nurse is a target for the ghosts to kill. In this case, because they're taking place after Death on the Nile, where it looks like Poirot actually retires at the end of it, here he is retired. And there are some Agatha Christie stories that take place with Poirot having retired. So it's not a stretch, but this doesn't happen to be one of them. And in those, a lot of times he ends up coming back to being a detective because he misses that his little brain cells need a murder mystery to keep him active. But they definitely do a lot of twists and turns here. And I don't want to ruin the story, so I'm going to avoid giving details on what those changes are, because some of them involve murders and stuff like that. But if you've seen A Halloween Party, you've not seen this movie. Basically what happens is, the setup for this one is Miss Oliver has discovered a medium played by Michelle. Oliver is played by Tina Fey. So it's fascinating that she gets brought into this. So Tina Fey, that character finds a medium who she was trying to prove was a fake, and instead sees things that she can't explain and wants to bring Poirot in to figure it out. Now, Oliver is a writer who believes that she made Poirot famous because she based a detective on him, and that her books, in a way, Agatha Christie was writing herself as this character. Like, she decided to write herself into a Poirot mystery, and this is just the character she chose to do it with. But she's got this kind of arrogance about her where she thinks that it's her writing success is what made Poirot a famous detective. So she wants Poirot to come help and manipulate situations to make that happen. Michelle Yeoh plays the medium, named Joyce Reynolds. Miss Reynolds, yeah. Which is interesting because that's the name of the little girl in Halloween Party. But here she's a medium who has an assistant who comes in because the owner of the house, Rowena Drake, played by Kelly Riley, her daughter committed suicide a year before. And she wants an opportunity to talk to her daughter again. And the cast is got, some really great characters in it. Jamie Dornan's in it as Dr. Leslie Ferrier, Dylan Corbett Bader, like I said, Michelle Yeoh, Tina Fey, Kelly Riley, Kenneth Branagh, Rowan Robinson, Lorenzo Aquavia. It's a really good cast. They do a good job putting it together. But again, it's kind of a self-contained movie. So they don't need the big lavish sets, the big, the train, and then, or the boat going down the Nile. It's all within this house, which makes it really good. Slipknot says, interesting, Lionsgate made a film called The Haunting in Connecticut. Seems movies with titles about haunting in actual locations is becoming a thing. I'm sure there's many others. Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, and it might be why they changed the name to this instead of The Halloween Party, which I don't think would have sold. Because this is a lot of new material, it's still a good Poirot mystery, but there are parts that doesn't feel like an Agatha Christie mystery. It feels like this is somebody doing a pastiche on it, or, their homage to Christie more so than adapting a Christie novel, because they didn't, And again, I'm not saying it's bad. I like the movie. I like the movie quite a bit. Branagh is still great as Poirot. Faye does a good job as Oliver. Michelle Yeoh is very good. Jamie Dornan, who I don't have that much familiarity with, did a great job as Ferrier. So from that point of view, it's an interesting mystery, but it's one that I figured out earlier than I normally do with an Agatha Christie story. I mean, I can pinpoint exactly where all the pieces fell together with one line. And I don't know if Christie would have put that line in there. It was too much of a clue. And there's some odd coincidences that happen in this movie. Things that people act slightly strange, and it sets up something that happens. You know, there's a scene where in a conversation between Michelle Yeoh's character and Kenneth Branagh's character, where she's telling him, you know, I can see that you're, you know, you don't live life anymore. You know, that you've moved past actually living now, and you're just existing, and you need to lighten up a little bit. And she arrived wearing, you know, a Halloween mask and a cloak, and she puts that on Poirot and to tell him to loosen up a bit or to lighten up. And of course, him having that on causes other things to happen. But it's a very awkward, it almost feels forced that she put this on him. You know? So to me, it's the acting is still as good. The directing is still as good. And maybe even a little more so because Branagh likes to use stuff like Dutch angles. That's where you turn the camera slightly askew to change the feel of a shot. And he tends to use it in a lot of stuff. He used it in Thor movies. And they were kind of strange in the Thor movies. But here, with the horror aspects and the supernatural aspects of it, it works a lot better. And of course, you know, you've got a seance going on. It's not your typical seance. They do some unique things in the seance. But it's still Poirot at his best. One of the actors that stood out particularly well to me, or did really well, is a young actor named Jude Hill. And Jude is, well, he was born in 2010, so he's, 13 now? He plays Leopold, who is also a character in the Halloween Party, but not in the same way. But he is really good in this. This is one of those kid actors that I think we're going to suddenly start seeing pop up in other things, you know, because he carries himself really well. So, overall, I like the movie a lot. It does suffer by not being an actual Agatha Christie story, because there is, when she is on, she writes incredible mysteries. And this one is just, there's a few too many coincidences or forced moments to be up on her level. That doesn't mean it's bad. Just means it's not up on her level. But again, Piranha is excellent. It's a fun watch. It has horror elements, but it's not really a horror movie. You know, it's not going to frighten you. Or so if you're not a horror fan and you're like, well, I don't want to watch that one because, you know, I don't like horror. No, it's a murder mystery. It just has a few supernatural elements, and it's Poirot, so you know he explains everything. So, all right, let's take our second break, and we come back, we'll wrap up the show. Be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rockin' Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience. Comic Culture and Sales. Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
According to a statistic that I just made up, people spend 4 hours a day changing the television channel. People who watch The Experience don't do that. Save yourself a ton of time by tuning into The Experience and enjoying our new original programming 7 days a week. And then tell your friends. Think about the money they could save on batteries in the remote alone just by tuning into The Experience. Find out more by scanning the QR code below.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Remember to stick around. We've got Comic Collectibles, Talking Treat Trivia, 360 Comics, who's doing a 20% off everything sale, and Kicking It with Henri for the rest of the evening, all worth sticking around for. What do we take away from today's show? Well, first thing we take away is that cornflakes do not make a good puzzle, that Marvel has heard us and is trying to right the ship, but there's still a big successful company that makes $500 million or $500 million on their bad movies. And if you're looking for something fun to watch this weekend, check out A Haunting in Venice. And if you haven't watched the previous Poirot films, they're good, worth watching too. So the ones with Kenneth Branagh or any that doesn't have John Malkovich in it. Really hated the John Malkovich ABC murders. Like fiery passion hate. Like if I could get the originals and burn it, I would. CJD, I talked about the show on Pop Go the Writers with Paul, and I explained how much I hated it. And then Paul insisted on watching it. And he watched it and hated it. So just keep that in mind. So, hey Mojo, how you doing? All right, we're going to wrap that up. Ed says, have a great night. I might not make it tomorrow. All depends on how my physical therapy goes. Well, good luck with physical therapy. Have a great weekend. If you don't make it, I don't know, maybe we should just cancel the show tomorrow if Ed's not going to be here. I mean, kidding. All right, so everybody have a great night. I will see you tomorrow with some topic, and enjoy your evenings. Good night, everybody.
Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.